Hello, Southern California, and welcome to this week's edition of Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the founder and president of Mosley Wealth Management, based right here in Southern California, and I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. We've got a great show for you today. The title of today's show is, Do You Want to Retire Now, Either by Force or by Choice? What do you need to do to be prepared? And that's what we're going to be talking all about. So Tom, my friend, great to see you as always.
Good to see you as well.
I know we did a radio show on this subject and you got a great response. I think for a lot of folks, that's their main question when they come in to meet with you and the team for the first time is, can I go ahead and retire? Do I have enough saved up? And am I going to be okay? But we've also seen an increase, unfortunately, in a lot of folks having to retire by force. Maybe it's because of several different issues we're going to talk about, but I know there's been a lot of downsizing, a lot of corporate restructurings, and it's so devastating for someone when they are right on the cusp of looking towards retirement. Maybe they're thinking, okay, I'm just going to work 2 more years, then I'm going to go ahead and retire. And then some big wig comes in and they use all the fancy corporate speak, but at the end of the day, what does that mean? You've now lost your job. What do you do? And how can you be prepared? So I know you've seen this happen a lot recently, right?
I recently had a couple that have been working with us for about 2 years. And when they came to us 2 years ago, we set down a plan like we always do. And we always ask, what's the projected date that you're going to retire? And they very clearly told me, they said, we're both going to work for the next 5 years. Well, what happened was 6 months ago, he had a massive heart attack and he's not able to work anymore. And then just recently, she had a great job and she was still working even though he was not able to work. He was drawing disability and she got laid off, you know. So here, boom, 2 unexpected plans, and they were planning on going 5 years and just 2 years into that plan. And that's top off years. That's the years where the kids are out of the house, the mortgage, the house is paid for, and you're really putting away money for retirement, that extra money for retirement, and all of a sudden it's just chopped short. Now, one thing I always encourage people to do though, Kristin, when they get into that situation, and I always tell them, just take a breath. A lot of people go out and they immediately within 24 hours, they start making monumental decisions when they've been forced out by either their own situation in something in their family that we'll go through some of the things that are there, or they're forced out by the company, and they go out and they start making decisions. And you're like an animal. I've seen a couple of times growing up on the farm, animals hit by cars and they just run off all over the place and they don't know what they're doing. And I can't help but think about that sometimes financially when people get laid off and it's something sudden that happened, big financial, and they go start making decisions. We run into a lot of situations where a spouse loses their mate. And I always encourage people, let's don't make any decisions unless it's a decision that absolutely has to be made for the first 3 to 6 months. You've been hit by a car. You've been hit by something. You've been hit by a layoff in this situation that we're talking about right now. You're forced out. And you had that plan, maybe like this couple I'm thinking about that had 5 years to go, but they didn't realize they really only had 2 years to go, and now they're out. So what do? You just let things settle. Take a walk, take a breath. As one of my, John Maxwell always says, when something really bad happens, just take a breath.
Take a beat.
Just rest. And it's always better that nothing, if it's a life and death situation, it's different. But if you don't have to make a decision today on something and you can wait a week or 2 or 3 or maybe a month, it's usually best just to take a break, let things settle. Things may change and something might happen that you don't know about. But then you've got to get to the point where you start making some decisions. We'll talk about that later in the show.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one thing I want to point out about that story, though, what a blessing that they had done the plan with you. that they knew that they could call you so that when a curveball was thrown their way, they knew that they had someone in their corner, and not just you, but your entire team. And yes, the plan then had to be adjusted and modified, but what a blessing to have that all locked and loaded ahead of time so that they knew where to go, where to turn to help them navigate through that unexpected curveball.
Well, they still had each other. I had a situation one time, this was about probably 8 or 9 years ago, where I actually just brought a new couple on, and they had just moved their stuff over, and it all got there, and we always have what we call a kickoff meeting where we bring them in and we say, here's your account, here's the number, here's what came over, you know, so we know what it started with. And I called them up to set up that kickoff, and I said, I'd like to speak to so-and-so. And she said, well, that's impossible because he passed away, you know, in a tragic accident, you know, a week before that.
Wow.
So fortunately, she was one that, as evidenced by what we experienced in the time that we worked with her, she was all over the place. He was the steady one, the planner, the one that had laid everything out and wanted everything laid out for her in case he was no longer there. And boom, before we really got the kickoff meeting, he was no longer there. And that, how would I say it, that flighty mentality of not really knowing and always having questions and moving around from here to there and always wanting me to move to something else or moves. And eventually she left us, you know. And I found out about a year or two after she left us that she said that was the biggest mistake she ever made in her life because I kept her from hurting herself. And a lot of times that's what we do when one spouse really is the one that knows the financial stuff. It's a wise thing that you say, I've got this under control, right? But what if you're 6 feet underground and you're not there to help? And that other spouse is just learning how to get things under control. Many times people find it advantageous to have that relationship with us so that when it always seems that the one who's financially savvy is the one who passes away. And then they leave the one who's not financially savvy. Well, at least if they have a relationship with us, we found that beneficial for people.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know we need to talk about some of these reasons. Let's start with retiring by force. That's never fun to think about, but there's several things that folks need to be prepared for that could cause them to retire sooner than they're planning on.
And unlike a lot of shows, I've got a list.
Yes, no, that's great.
I just want to go through it because some of the things that I talk about, you may not be hit on by this list, but some of the others, like number one, you may be retiring for health issues. The question is, how are you going to maintain your health coverage? And what's that going to cost you? You may be retiring because your family has health issues and you've got to be the caretaker. Recently, I had a lady who was 50 who had taken off for 13 years and not worked from 37 to 50 and was starting a retirement plan because she took off to take care of both of her dying parents and her elderly parents. Caregiving is a responsibility. It may just be a job loss, and you're not only you're facing, how do I have income now? We're not talking about retirement. We're talking about eating now. It may be that it's over age discrimination. And I don't think it's age discrimination, but I've said so many times that my grandfather got a pension and a party and a gold watch. And now when you turn 50, they give you an invisible t-shirt with a bullseye in the back. And every time they start to lay somebody off, it seems like it's somebody over 50.
Well, they want to lay off the people that are earning the most money, right? And who typically have the most experience, and they know that they can get someone in cheaper. And so that does happen. Companies are forced to tell you, if you're over a certain age, how many people they've laid off in that age category.
But Kristin, it's also, and I'm a business owner that provides health insurance for all of my 15 employees, and it's also a more expensive proposition to provide them. So I get it. I mean, if I can take a 20-year-old and it costs me $200 for their health insurance, and my 61-year-old and it costs over $1,200 for that, that's $1,000 a month for providing basically the same service. So a lot of these things, you may have a financial windfall, and it changes your situation, and all of a sudden, boom, you're out, or you want to change your lifestyle. There's so many things. I think the best story is a guy called me one day, and he just said, I want to retire. So, you know, we'll talk about that in the next segment, but we're talking about it's unexpected and you're forced out. And to your point, Kristin, it was advantageous for those people to already be working with us. But many times you think, Well, I've got 2 years till I retire. I can wait to get a financial planner, a wealth advisor, a retirement specialist once I retire. Well, so many times people have made monumental mistakes by leaving a company because you were forced to retire, and you make quick decisions without getting some input, and you make decisions that are wrong for you. And they're decisions that put you, instead of in front of the 8 ball, they put you behind the 8 ball. For instance, if you get forced out before you're 59 and a half and you take your 401k, I've seen this happen a lot of times. You take your 401k out and you put it in an IRA. Well, guess what? You can get money out of a 401k before you're 59 and a half by certain ways without penalties. But once you put it in an IRA before 59 and a half, no way to get it out of there without penalties. So don't be forced out and go make a lot of financial decisions that put you behind the 8 ball. You need to be working with someone like us. That's the benefit of working with someone who's been through this thousands of times with people, who knows the rules, who knows the laws, who knows what each of those accounts that you have, and knows what to ask the HR people when you're on your way out.
Yes.
What can I take with me? What's portable? What do I take with me that I need? Have you had diabetes and had a heart problem and you can't get life insurance, but you can take the life insurance you have from work and have it portable to you and keep it with you for the rest of your life? So many questions.
Yes.
You need an advisor to help you when you get forced out.
Absolutely, and that's why it's never too early to get started. So if any of this is resonating with you, we know it's not fun to think about retiring by force if you're not ready or you don't want to, but wouldn't it be so much better to have a solid plan in place so that if life does throw you a curveball, you have someone to guide you along the way? That's what the team of Mosley Wealth Management would love to do for you. And so for no cost, no charge, no obligation, this is simply an invitation to have a conversation to see how they can help you and build you your very own complimentary retirement blueprint. We invite you to pick up the phone and call that number you see on the bottom of your screen, 866-709-1462. Or if you'd rather connect online, if you simply pull out your smartphone, you can open up the camera app, just point, click, and scan that QR code that you see there down in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. That will take you over to a landing page, ask you a few short, simple questions, and then a member of the team from Mosley Wealth Management will reach out to connect with you to schedule your complimentary meeting that way as well. When we come back, we're going to dive into what if you're someone who wants to go ahead and retire, you want to retire by choice. What things do you need to be taking into consideration even now? Stay with us to find out.
Welcome to Right on the Money Moment. My name is 𝗤𝗵cie, joined today by Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management. And Tom, I have a very important question for you. The importance of proper holistic retirement planning. Why is that important to folks in the viewing audience today to plan properly for retirement?
It's a great question. A lot of people come in and they talk to us and I ask them, I said, do you have a financial plan? And they'll hand me a 401k statement, or they'll hand me a 403b statement or an IRA account. Now those accounts are great, don't get me wrong. That's like the lumberyard that you use and put together in a retirement blueprint to build a plan. But if you don't have a written plan, you're hoping things work out. If you've got all of your money left in the market like you did when you were 25, 30, 35, 40 years of age, that's where it should be. But if you've got all of your money left in the market in retirement, you've got hope as a plan. Hope the market doesn't go down. Hope I'm still able to draw money out. I have a group of friends that we travel with at least 1 week a year, and we go somewhere, and we're planning next year to go to 𝗥𝗲𝗁. We've got our Airbnb. We've got what we're going to do each day. We've got a rental vehicle. We know where we're going to be, when we're going to be, and we've got it written down. If we want to alter what we do one day, guess what? You can alter it.
Yes.
But if you don't have the plan, you're just all over the place. You're hoping we're going to go up there, find a hotel, maybe we can get a rental car. If not, we might have to take Uber in 𝗥𝗲𝗁. I don't know if that'll work. So you say, well, that's sort of silly. Well, it's sort of silly to go into a 20-year retirement and to spend less time preparing for it than you will on a 2-week vacation somewhere to Europe, or maybe a 1-week vacation to 𝗥𝗲𝗁. So it's really important that people have a written financial plan when they get to retirement.
Tom, thank you so much for such amazing advice. To our viewers at home, you need a plan. You heard it from Tom. Take care.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and today Tom and I are discussing all about being prepared if life throws you a curveball. We've been talking about what happens if you are forced to retire earlier than you had anticipated, but we also want to talk about what if you want to retire now? What if you want to retire by choice? And I know you have a great story you're going to share with our viewers. There's a lot of positive reasons for some folks to go ahead and pull the plug and go ahead and say, yes, I'm done working. I want to go ahead and retire. So let's talk about that.
Great story. Great client named Ken. Saw him in the office last week. And I told him, I said, I'm going to use this on the TV show coming up. And he said, fine, go ahead. Ken called me up one time and he said, they had just started to work. He and his wife had just started to work with me. And he said, Tom, this is Ken. I said, hi, Ken, how you doing? I said, what can I help you with? He said, can I retire? And I could hear the cars in the background and everything. I said, where are you, Ken? He said, I'm on the 91 freeway, right about Weir Canyon. And he was in the Inland Empire and he worked down in Newport Beach and he had to travel that horrible freeway and then get on the 55 and travel that horrible freeway. So the 91, the 55, sounds like OJ, doesn't it? All the freeways he went through way back when. But he's sitting there, he says, can I retire? So I said, well, yeah, let me pull up your stuff. I said, I know you can. He said, good. He said, I'm turning around at Weir Canyon and going home. And so he retired by choice immediately. But there are a lot of people, a lot of you are out there and you say, I'd like to retire by choice, but you have, for whatever reason, you've been working with an investment guy or an investment lady, and they're an investment person who's there and they're great for accumulation. But when it comes to retirement, it's preservation. It's making sure that you don't run out of money the rest of your life. And that's where the plan comes in. And so you don't have a plan, so you're uncertain. And there are a lot of reasons people want to retire by choice. And let me tell you something. We have the responsibility and the right, and let me go back to responsibility, that we have a lot of people come in and say, can we retire right now? I recently had a couple came in, they were 55 and 54. And they said, we want to retire right now. One of them had gotten laid off and the other one had come to the end of a contract where it was like they sign a contract for another 2 or 3 years with the same company. And they said, we'd like to know if we can retire right now. That's where we come in. That's where a real financial plan comes in. And so retiring by choice early presents some issues that are different. If they were 65 and 64, they wouldn't have nearly as many issues to negotiate.
Right, because why?
A lot of things. Let me show you, okay? Yeah. A lot of them want to retire because they have a passion or they want to travel and they want to do all of those things. But when you retire that way, it puts a lot of pressure on your situation because you've got to provide your own health insurance. You've got a 401k or an IRA that you might have a little trouble tapping the money before you're 59 and a half, which is that magical age. But in this segment, let me just try to resonate with some of you out there who are saying, I want to retire. The biggest thing I'm seeing right now, people come in and they say a combination of these things. My company got bought out. I've been there forever. I love the company, but they got bought out. They brought in a new president. They brought in a new manager. I'm working in a different division. I had one lady say recently, she said, I have gone in 2 years from loving everybody I worked with and loving my company to I hate my company. I hate my boss. I hate the people that I work with. It is just killing me to go to work. And you know what? It likely is potentially killing her to go to work because the stress on those people, the burden of going to work, it's almost like, Kristin, they took something that was always a blessing, that was always something they cherished, because a lot of people have their social network at school, at work.
It feels like school, right?
My daughters teach at school, and they were talking about somebody who had this at the school.
Right.
But then they changed the principal and things completely changed, or they changed the superintendent and things completely changed. So, but when something changes, and it goes from being that place, your happy place, and the place you really enjoy being, it goes to being a place you dread going to. So you want to do it by choice. Other people have come in and they've said, My best friend just had some major health issues. I had somebody recently came in and said, a really, really dear friend of mine just passed away at 61. I was planning on working until I'm 65. I don't think I have to, do I? Put together a plan so I can retire by choice early. You know what they were saying? The one who passed away at 61 missed almost all of their go-go years, all of their fun years. And a lot of people work right up until the end of their health.
Yep.
And we don't know when that is.
Right.
But they work right up to the end of their health, and then they retire and their health is gone and they can't go and they can't enjoy it. Retiring by choice, it's possible. But you need, before you do that, don't do it on a whim on the 91 freeway, okay? You need to have a financial plan, and you need to have the input of somebody who's going to be as concerned about whether you're going to be able to go do the things in your go-go years if you do retire by choice early, that you're going to have enough money to go buy food when you're 85 years old and 90 years old, and you're going to have enough money when there's only one of you if you're married. Okay, so go retire by choice, but don't do it without a plan.
Absolutely. So if any of this is resonating with you, if you're at the point where you're saying, you know what, I do want to go ahead and pull that plug, I do want to go ahead and retire, this is a great opportunity for you to get that solid plan in place before you make that important decision, so that you can have the peace of mind of knowing, like Tom said, that you are going to be okay. If you would like to get your complimentary retirement blueprint, it's really easy. All you need to do is call that number on the bottom of your screen, 866-709-1462, or again, you're also welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. We'll be back with more right after this.
Fiduciary is a big word in our industry, and fiduciary means you act in a client's best interest. At Mosley Wealth Management, you are an individual. You're different than anybody else on this planet. You look different. You've got a different social security number. You live at a different address. Everything about you is different. The first visit is just getting to know them, getting to know where they are. We literally start with a blank legal pad. And at the end of that meeting, we just say, okay, you've brought a lot of stuff here. Do you want us to look at this stuff and see what we would recommend? And when I look at statements that people bring me from so-called fiduciaries, and I ask them, I say, why did you get put 50% in this and 50% in this? Many times they'll say, well, that's what the advisor said he likes to do. My question is, would I do this for my mom? Would I do this for my dad? Would I do this for myself? So you really have to sit back sometimes and say, if I were them, if I were sitting on their side of the table, what would I do? And I've literally sat in my office at least once every 2 or 3 weeks and try to put together a case for somebody where it's iffy as to whether they'll make it or not. And you have to ask yourself, what would I do if I were in their situation? And never, ever recommend something that you wouldn't do if you were right where they are.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and today Tom and I have been discussing all the financial considerations surrounding whether you are retiring by force or by choice. And there's several things to take into consideration no matter where you fall on that spectrum. The point is we want folks to be prepared for either when they go ahead and decide to make that important decision to retire, or if life throws them a curveball and they have to adjust accordingly. So let's talk about some of those financial considerations.
Well, you and I were discussing during the break, the early retirement creates a lot of problems, okay?
It can,
It
right?
can,
Yeah.
It really can, because you've got a shorter period of time in your lifetime that you've had to build up that lumber yard to build a plan out of. And you've got a bridge to a lot of the key things that are there. You've got a bridge from, say, 55, like this couple I brought up recently and earlier in a segment. You've got a bridge from 55 to 59 and a half to when you can really access the money that's in your 401ks and your IRAs and those kind of things without any encumbrances, okay? And then you've got a bridge on your health insurance. A lot of times that's a showstopper because they realize that, especially if it's a single person and you've only got one income, and when you're 55 to 65, you may pay $1,000 a month for your health insurance, and you've got to bridge that until you get to Medicare. And Medicare is a good plan.
Yep.
You know, they keep telling us they're going to fix it, and that always scares me because when they fix something, it usually is not as good as it is. But it's a really good plan right now, and it's relatively inexpensive. Most people's health care goes down when they get onto Medicare, and they have just as good a coverage, if not better. Okay, so, but you've got to bridge from wherever you are to 65 to get Medicare. You've got to bridge from wherever you are to 62 to the very minimal Social Security. And if you want to maximize your Social Security or optimize, take it at the best time for you, it might be 67 or 70. So if you're 55, you've got 12 to 15 years to bridge. So longevity. You know, not just longevity till you reach that, but think about this. If I'm 65 and I live to 90, I've got a 25-year stress on my lumber yard or on the money that I've put away. If I retire at 55, I then put a 35-year stress on that. So there's more market volatility during that time.
Right.
There's usually going to be, in a 10-year extra period, there's going to usually be twice as many downturns of potentially 20% or more.
There's more inflation
There's
to navigate.
more inflation over a period of time. Social Security, like we've said, you've got to wait on it. Your investment strategy, a lot of people get to retirement and they're able to, what I call, pull in the flaps or turn off the motor and become a glider, because you don't necessarily need to be really ratcheting up and going for the high, big gains every year. You can ratchet down your risk level. But if I'm 55, I've got 35 years to live, or a spouse has 35 years to live, you probably have to stay involved in the market and somewhat a little bit more risky than you need to be. Maybe not what you want to be, than what you need to be. There are tons. Tax considerations.
Yes.
You know, how am I going to tap that? And what are my tax considerations going to be? And if we see a national debt going up and up and up, we can only surmise what taxes might be in the future. There's other things on this. You know, a lot of people who are 55 still have debt. They may still have a house that they're paying for. And as I've said before, I know the math on these low interest rates that people get on homes, but I also know that the most contented people I have in my client family are the people who have their home paid for.
Right.
So retire early by force or by choice. One just comes suddenly, and the other one you think about for a while and you do. You still have monumental financial decisions to make, and you have a lot more stress on your financial plan. All the more reason to sooner rather than later start putting together a retirement blueprint. We offer that for free, but you've got to call in, get on our schedule, and we can help you build a plan to see if you can retire by choice, or to see if you get forced out, how you can make it.
And that's the important thing, is being prepared, doing it on the front end, right? Tom, thank you so much. I'm excited for more folks to connect with you as a result of today's show. And thank you for being here. Again, that number to call, 866-709-1462. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We look forward to being back with you next time here on Right on the Money with Tom Mosley.